The stars twinkled like silent sentinels in the endless stretch of space, their light casting an ethereal glow on the distant planets and moons. In the vastness of the universe, Earth seemed like a mere speck, a small, fragile world in the corner of an immense galaxy. Yet, despite the planet's insignificance in the grand scheme of things, humanity had risen above its humble origins to become a force that even the most advanced species had learned to fear. It was not the power of their weapons, nor the might of their armies, but the resilience and strength of the human spirit that made Earth's warriors terrifying to those who dared to face them. Among these warriors were the Deathworlders, elite soldiers who had been forged in the fires of the most hostile environments known to any species. Raised on planets where survival was a daily struggle, they had become something more than human. Their bodies had evolved to adapt to extreme conditions, making them stronger, faster, and more deadly than any other warrior force in the galaxy. They were the galaxy's ultimate special forces, and their reputation preceded them wherever they went. Captain Kell of the Deathworlder Special Forces stood at the window of the command room aboard the flagship Vanguard, gazing out at the distant stars. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the room, but Kell could feel the tension in the air. The calm was deceptive. The mission ahead would be the most dangerous they had ever faced, and Kell could sense that the threat they were about to encounter was unlike anything they had ever dealt with before. The Deathworlders had fought in countless wars, facing enemies of every kind, insectoid beasts, highly advanced AI, and even alien species that had once considered themselves the dominant force in the galaxy. But this time, the enemy was different. This time, they were up against the alien mercenaries. The mercenaries were a highly trained group of soldiers for hire who had built a reputation for being the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. Known for their ruthlessness and brutality, they were hired by the highest bidder to carry out missions that no other military force would dare attempt. They had conquered entire planets, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake, and they had fought against species far more advanced than humanity. Yet they had never met a force like the Deathworlders. Cale turned away from the window and looked at his team, his elite unit of soldiers, each one trained in the most dangerous forms of combat. They were a group of individuals who had been through hell and back, each carrying the scars of battles fought on unforgiving worlds. And yet, despite the horror they had faced, they remained as formidable as ever. These were the warriors who had taken down the galaxy's greatest threats. They had never been beaten, and they were determined to ensure that their perfect record remained intact. "All right, team," Cale said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "We've trained for this. We've faced worse. The mercenaries may think they're unbeatable, but they've never faced humanity's elite special forces before. We have one advantage over them, and that's our will to survive. They fight for credits. We fight for our people, for Earth. And that's something they'll never understand." His words were met with nods of agreement from his soldiers. They knew what was at stake. The mercenaries had arrived on a distant world, a planet in a distant star system, where they had been hired to wipe out a resistance group that had been causing trouble for a powerful galactic organization. The resistance had no chance against the mercenaries' advanced technology and superior firepower. But what the mercenaries didn't know was that the resistance had one ally that would turn the tide of the war: the Deathworlders. Cal's mission was simple: infiltrate the enemy's base, disrupt their operations, and eliminate the mercenary threat. The plan was a daring one, but Cal had no doubt that they would succeed. His team had faced far worse odds and had come out victorious every time. The room was filled with a quiet determination as the soldiers gathered their gear and prepared for the mission ahead. Their weapons, sleek and deadly, were ready for battle. Each soldier checked their armor, making sure everything was in place. The Deathworlders were not just soldiers. They were living weapons, designed to survive in the most extreme environments. Their bodies had been enhanced, their reflexes sharpened, and their endurance tested. They could withstand temperatures that would kill any normal human, and they could fight for days without rest. But even with all their advantages, they knew this mission would be one of the toughest they had ever faced. As they suited up, Kale received a message from the command center. "Captain Kale, the shuttle is ready for launch. You're clear to proceed." "Understood," Kale replied, his voice steady. "We're on our way." The team moved quickly, heading to the hangar where their transport shuttle awaited. As they boarded, Kale couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This was what they had trained for. This was their purpose. The Deathworlders had never backed down from a fight, and this time they would prove that no mercenary, no matter how powerful, could stand against them. As the shuttle lifted off from the Vanguard, Kale took one last look at the distant stars. They were heading into enemy territory, into a fight that could determine the fate of humanity. And as always, the Deathworlders would be the ones to stand between Earth and destruction. The calm before the storm. The shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere, its engines roaring as they cut through the thick clouds. The mercenary base was located in a remote mountainous region, far from the prying eyes of the galactic authorities. But the Deathworlders didn't need a map. They knew how to navigate any terrain, and their training had prepared them for any environment. As they landed near the base, the team disembarked, moving swiftly and silently through the dense forest. The mercenaries were well armed and highly trained, but the Deathworlders had something that the mercenaries didn't, an intimate connection with the environments they fought in. They could read the land, sense the smallest movements, and adapt to any situation. They were hunters, and their prey was about to learn just how dangerous they were. Cal's eyes scanned the horizon. The base was heavily guarded, but the Deathworlders were experts at infiltrating enemy lines. They had done it before on countless occasions, and this would be no different. The team moved quickly, using the cover of the dense jungle to stay hidden. The mercenaries had no idea that the galaxy's deadliest soldiers were standing just outside their door. Kale signaled for his team to stop, crouching low in the underbrush. He could hear the sound of alien voices in the distance, their words muffled by the thick trees. He raised his hand, signaling for silence. They were close. The enemy was just ahead. The moment had arrived. The Deathworlders were about to unleash their fury. Cal's hand hovered over his weapon as he gave the order. "On my mark. Take them down." The forest was alive with the sounds of distant creatures, the hum of wind through the trees, and the constant chirping of insects. Yet amidst the serene and deceptive calm of the jungle, something darker loomed. Captain Kale and his team of Deathworlders crouched in the underbrush, their keen senses focused on the enemy base just ahead. The tension in the air was palpable. Every small sound could mean danger. Every movement was calculated. Kale looked over his team. They were ready. The mercenary base, a sprawling compound surrounded by high walls and guarded by a small army of alien soldiers, seemed like an insurmountable obstacle. But for the Deathworlders, obstacles were only challenges to overcome. They were born to face impossible odds, and today they would prove once again why humanity's elite special forces were feared across the galaxy. "We breach in 3, Kale whispered, his voice barely audible but filled with the unmistakable tone of command. "Get into position." The team moved swiftly, each soldier slipping through the underbrush with the precision of a predator hunting its prey. The mercenaries, confident in their technological superiority, had been lax in their patrols. They didn't know that humanity's most dangerous warriors had arrived on their doorstep. In the distance, the base loomed large, its walls reinforced with alien technology. Spotlights scanned the area methodically, but Kel's team was used to moving in the shadows. They had fought on Deathworlds, planets so hostile that only the fittest could survive, and they had become experts at survival. Alien technology meant nothing to them. It was just another puzzle to solve. "We take the east wall first. The west will follow when the signal is given," Cal continued. His voice, while low, had a steady rhythm to it, a calm that inspired confidence in his soldiers. "Keep your focus. The mercenaries are deadly, but they won't see us coming. Each Deathworlder knew their role, and the plan was simple but effective. Infiltrate, disable the base's communication systems, and create a diversion for the main assault. Their mission was clear: disrupt the mercenaries' operations, sow confusion, and then take out their leaders. The Deathworlders were the spearhead, the ones who would face the enemy head-on. Kale signaled, and the team moved. The first wave of Deathworlders, including himself, approached the east side of the base, while the rest of the team prepared to follow once the signal was given. The mercenaries, busy with their duties, had no idea that they were about to face humanity's finest warriors. The first clash as Kale approached the base's outer perimeter. The faintest hum of energy pulses could be heard, emanating from the mercenary weapons and shields. Despite the soundproofing of the jungle, the Deathworlders had learned to listen for the subtle vibrations of their surroundings. Cal's hand went to the grip of his rifle, his fingers lightly brushing the cold, smooth surface. His heart beat in a calm, steady rhythm. He was not nervous, not even a little. He had done this countless times before, but there was something different this time. This enemy was not like any they had faced before. The mercenaries were skilled, some of the galaxy's finest after all, and their arsenal was vast. They were ruthless, and their reputation as mercenaries was built on the bloody corpses of civilizations they had crushed. These weren't simple soldiers, they were hired killers, and that made them dangerous. Kale crouched behind a large rock, signaling his team to do the same. They were moments away from the first breach. Initiating EMP, Lieutenant Simmons, the team's engineer, whispered from the back. She was one of the best at disabling enemy technology, and her skills would make or break the operation. The mercenaries won't know what hit them. She activated a small glowing device, and within seconds, the surrounding area went silent. The mercenaries' advanced comms and radar systems went dark, leaving them blind to the Deathworlders' movements. The base, for all its defenses, was now vulnerable. The Deathworlders were inside. Kale nodded at Simmons before signaling the others. The first wave was in motion. The team moved like shadows, darting from cover to cover, keeping their heads low. They reached the east wall without incident, bypassing the first layer of security. They would be inside in moments. But as they neared the wall, a sudden sound broke the quiet, a faint rustling in the underbrush. One of the mercenaries had spotted something. Cal's heart rate quickened, but his mind remained calm. There was no time to hesitate. The element of surprise had been lost, and now the fight would begin. A single shot rang out from a nearby guard tower, narrowly missing one of the Deathworlders as they scrambled for cover. The mercenaries were on alert now, but Kale was already moving. He ducked and rolled, taking cover behind a large pile of debris. The rest of his team followed suit, and within moments, they were firing back, their weapons designed for rapid, lethal strikes. Cal's rifle came up, firing with deadly precision. The first mercenary fell, his body crumpling to the ground in a heap. A second guard appeared in the tower, but Cal's team had already moved, their actions coordinated and fluid. They were a deadly unit, born to fight, and they were relentless, covering fire. Sergeant Diaz shouted as she took aim at another mercenary on the outer perimeter. The Deathworlders fired with uncanny accuracy, taking down one enemy after another. Each shot seemed to echo louder in Cal's ears, the tension mounting as the battle intensified. But the mercenaries were formidable, and they didn't back down easily. A massive alien mercenary appeared from the shadows, his bulky form charging toward Cal's position. He was covered in heavy, reinforced armor, and his weapon was a massive plasma cannon, capable of turning a small building into rubble. "Cal, get out of the way," Lieutenant Simmons shouted, seeing the threat approaching. But Cal was already on the move. His instincts kicked in, and he darted forward, his body moving faster than any ordinary human could. The alien mercenary fired, but Cal was already behind him. He sprang forward, using his enhanced strength to slam into the enemy's side, knocking him off balance. The mercenary stumbled, and Kale, without hesitation, grabbed the plasma cannon and hurled it away. In one smooth motion, Kale pressed the butt of his rifle into the alien's chest, pulling the trigger at point-blank range. The alien fell, dead before he hit the ground. The base was now in chaos. The mercenaries had no idea how to deal with an enemy that refused to yield. Their superior numbers were useless against the Deathworlders' determination and combat prowess. Kale stood over the fallen mercenary, his face grim, but his eyes filled with purpose. He turned to his team. "This is just the beginning," Kale said, his voice unwavering. "We've got a long way to go, but they've made a fatal mistake. They've underestimated humanity's special forces, and now they'll pay the price." The rising storm. As the Deathworlders continued their assault, the mercenaries realized that they were in a fight unlike any they had faced before. The tide had turned, and the confidence that had once been their greatest strength was now their weakness. They had thought they could crush the human forces with ease, but humanity's elite special forces were unlike any enemy they had ever encountered. The Deathworlders moved with a precision that even the most skilled mercenaries couldn't match. Each Deathworlder knew exactly what to do and when to do it. They communicated in silence, through gestures and signals, executing their plan with military precision. But the mercenaries weren't going down without a fight. As the Deathworlders advanced deeper into the base, the mercenaries regrouped and began to fight back with everything they had. They unleashed wave after wave of alien soldiers, hoping to overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers. But for every mercenary that fell, another rose to take their place. The tension reached a breaking point as the final mercenary stronghold came into view. Kale knew that the true test was still ahead. The mercenary leader, a fierce and calculating alien warlord, awaited them in the heart of the base. But Kale was ready. The Deathworlders had proven their superiority, and now they would face the final challenge that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The battle had escalated beyond anything the Deathworlders could have expected. The mercenaries, ruthless and confident in their ability to crush any resistance, were now reeling from the unexpected ferocity of humanity's elite forces. The quiet jungle around the mercenary base had transformed into a battlefield, with the sounds of blaster fire, explosions, and the cries of wounded soldiers filling the air. Humanity's special forces had come to show the galaxy what true strength and resolve looked like. Captain Kale surveyed the battlefield from a concealed position, his breath steady, but his senses heightened. The battle was at a tipping point. The mercenaries had regrouped, launching counterattacks with precision. They were not foolish, and their battle-hardened leaders were beginning to realize that these Deathworlders were unlike anything they had ever faced. The humans had caught them off guard, and now they were making their presence felt with every step. "All squads, hold your ground," Kel's voice came over the comms. "We move forward when the signal is given. Don't let them take the initiative." His soldiers were scattered throughout the battlefield, using the terrain to their advantage. They were always a step ahead, striking quickly and retreating before the enemy could respond. The Deathworlders' guerrilla tactics were something the mercenaries had not prepared for, and it was starting to cost them. But the mercenaries weren't just going to give up their stronghold. "We need to break their lines and disable their weapon systems," Lieutenant Simmons, the team's tech specialist, reported from the rear. "I'm picking up multiple energy signatures coming from their main bunker. They're powering up something big." Cal's eyes narrowed as he looked toward the bunker in the distance. He knew that whatever the mercenaries were preparing would be their last-ditch effort to hold on to the base. The signal from Simmons confirmed his fears. This was no ordinary weapon. The mercenaries were about to unleash a devastating counterattack, one that could turn the tide of the war. "We need to stop them before they fire that weapon," Kale said firmly. "Simmons, you and Diaz move to the bunker. Disable it before it's too late. The rest of us will cover you." As Cal's team advanced through the jungle, the mercenaries launched another wave of reinforcements. They had clearly underestimated the Deathworlders' ability to adapt and respond, And now they were desperate. The mercenaries were fighting not just to win, but to survive. They had begun to realize that this was no ordinary mission. It was a battle for their very existence. Simmons and Diaz moved quickly, using their training to navigate through the dense foliage while remaining unseen. They knew the mercenaries' bunker was heavily guarded, but their mission was clear: disable the weapon before it could be activated. Every second counted. Meanwhile, Kale and the rest of the team held their positions, picking off any mercenaries who ventured too close. The mercenaries had once been confident, believing they could dominate this planet with their superior firepower. But the Deathworlders had shown them that sheer strength was no match for human ingenuity and willpower. The battle had become a test of endurance, and Kale's team was determined to outlast the enemy. One of the mercenaries, a towering alien covered in battle armor, stepped forward and called out orders in a guttural language. Kale knew the mercenary was one of their best commanders, a leader who had likely been sent to crush the human resistance. But Kale and his team had dealt with leaders like him before: cold, calculating, and ruthless. They knew how to bring them down. Kale nodded to Sergeant Diaz, who had already positioned herself for the shot. The mercenary leader, oblivious to the threat, raised his weapon, preparing to launch an attack on one of the human squads. Diaz didn't hesitate. She fired her plasma rifle, the shot hitting the mercenary square in the chest. The alien leader crumpled to the ground, his weapon falling from his hands. "Keep moving," Kale shouted as the remaining mercenaries began to scatter. "They're losing their grip. Don't let up now." The heart of the storm. Simmons and Diaz reached the bunker's entrance, their every step filled with the urgency of their mission. They crouched low, avoiding the guards stationed outside the compound. The air around them was thick with the sound of blaster fire and the hum of alien technology. The mercenaries were in full retreat now, but they weren't finished yet. Their final weapon, hidden deep inside the bunker, was humanity's last obstacle to victory. Simmons worked quickly, hacking into the security system of the bunker's entrance. The controls were unfamiliar, but she was a seasoned engineer, and no system could hold her back for long. Her fingers flew across the console, inputting a series of commands. The door to the bunker slowly began to open. "We're in," she said, looking to Diaz. "Let's move." They entered the darkened bunker, their weapons raised as they cleared each corner. The interior was quiet except for the occasional beep of machinery and the hum of energy running through the walls. The mercenaries had set up a makeshift command center inside, and in the middle of the room stood a massive energy cannon, aimed directly at the sky. The cannon was connected to a series of powerful energy sources, and if it was fired, it could decimate entire cities. Simmons and Diaz moved toward the cannon's power core, their steps measured and precise. They had no room for error. "Diaz, cover me," Simmons ordered, her hands working quickly as she accessed the core's shutdown sequence. The seconds seemed to stretch into eternity as Simmons tried to decipher the alien coding. The countdown to launch was already underway, and they had to stop the cannon before it could charge. "Got it," Simmons said, her voice steady. The power core's screen flashed red as the sequence completed. The cannon powered down, its lights dimming as the threat was neutralized. "Nice work," Diaz said, breathing a sigh of relief. "Let's get out of here before the whole base comes down on us." The final victory. With the weapon disabled, Cal's team moved quickly to secure the rest of the base. The mercenaries, now leaderless and disorganized, were no match for the relentless Deathworlders. The rest of the Deathworlder squads joined forces with Cal's team, and together they pushed forward, taking down any remaining mercenaries with military precision. The mercenaries had thought they could outfight the humans. They had thought they could crush the resistance in a matter of hours. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's greatest strength: the will to survive. Kale stood at the heart of the mercenary base, surveying the battlefield. His team had done the impossible. They had infiltrated the enemy's stronghold, disabled their ultimate weapon, and destroyed their leadership. The mercenaries had been routed, and their plans for domination had been shattered. "It's over," Kale said, his voice calm but filled with satisfaction. "The mercenaries are done. Earth is safe." The mission had been a success, but Kale knew that the fight was far from over. There would always be more enemies, more threats lurking in the shadows of the galaxy. But for now, humanity had proven its strength. The Deathworlders had faced the greatest mercenaries the galaxy had ever seen and emerged victorious. As the team regrouped and began to leave the base, Kale took one last look at the smoldering ruins of the mercenary stronghold. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter now, as if the galaxy itself had taken notice of humanity's triumph. The Deathworlders had won the day, and their enemies would remember this victory for generations to come.